But Hollywood celebrities, I know you talk about them sometimes, how like they're just like kind of annoying, right? Like
kind
in
of.
their liberal bubble out
Dude,
there, kind of.
it's the, I there's no, it's not the liberal, it's not them being liberal specifically. It's more the group think and the
Right,
hypocrisy and the cowardice and the cancel culture and
right.
all of that nonsense. If people have different political views, but they can be tolerant and people can think for themselves and people can actually just be genuine and authentic, then, whether or not I totally agree, there's nobody I totally agree with in this world, right? I don't even totally agree with myself. This sort of notion that we all have to and should totally agree with each other is completely absurd,
Yeah.
and sort of denies reality. So, I don't want to sort of lump all of any group of people in one sort of basket. But when it comes to the entertainment industry in general, it is very much an echo chamber. It is very much a bubble. There is more diversity of opinion than most people actually think, but one side of it is massively subdued. So it's not
That's so
really,
weird. That's so
well,
weird.
it is, but it's also not that surprising if you understand human psychology and if you sort of understand the way industries like entertainment are. You get some of the same thing in tech. There are certain industries which just have like a massive lean in one direction, typically in the leftwards direction politically.
Hmm.
This happens in music, this happens in tech, this happens in Hollywood, this happens in academia. And it means that people who are more right leaning or more conservative often feel very uncomfortable expressing their views. And, sometimes rightfully so. Sometimes I think it's just cowardice. I think it's mostly cowardice, but you can also see why that exists, right? If you look at this, I don't know if you saw that situation that happened with Gina Carano in the last couple of weeks, where
I'm not familiar
you
with that actually.
okay, well, she's an actress. She's probably most famous for being in The Mandalorian,
Okay.
and she's more conservative leaning. So they've been trying to sort of axe her for years. They've been trying to get rid of her. They've been trying to cancel her. And last week she got dropped from The Mandalorian, and she also lost all of her representation based off of an Instagram story post, which was basically saying that hating people for their political views is a dangerous precedent, and that's how things escalate. She used a Holocaust comparison, which some people may say is a little bit overblown, but her point, to anyone sensible, the point wasn't to
Right.
directly compare it to the Holocaust. It's talking about how the Holocaust didn't happen, within 6 months of Hitler taking power. There was a concentrated effort to demonize a certain group of people, make them seem inhumane, and ultimately justify huge violence against them. And by them sort of coming after her and canceling her for this, they'd actually kind of proved the point that she was making,
Yeah,
ironically. But that's
exactly.
one example of many, but that's a pretty high profile example.
Yeah. How did they even like justify it when she got removed from the show? Did they
Hmm.
say it's because of this specific
Yeah, they
post?
they claimed the post was anti-Semitic and racist.
Just because it probably had the word Holocaust in it.
It didn't
Like
even.
you,
It had the
it
word Jews in
didn't.
it. It didn't even have the word
Ugh,
conservative or Republican or anything. It was completely neutral. Like it was something that would run in any
it's
direction,
crazy.
right? It
It's
could run in the
crazy.
direction of someone who's more conservative hating somebody who's liberal, right? But because
Right.
of the climate we live in, people just interpreted it in the dumbest way possible, to be honest, and the most dishonest way possible. And they somehow claimed that it was anti-Jewish and it was racist. It's ridiculous. It was really stupid. It was very egregious.
Yeah, and the point is so simple. It's just like
Yeah.
you can't hate people for their opinions. Of course
Yeah, you
not.
shouldn't. It's a
And
dangerous precedent. If you start running around saying that half of America is racist or bigots or Nazis or, white supremacists or white supremacist adjacent or whatever, then, and then you start toying with ideas of, oh, we need to we need to re-educate these people, or we need to do this, or we need to do that, or you're condoning or justifying violence against people, you know,
yeah.
what Rush Limbaugh died yesterday, right?
Right.
People are there, dancing on his grave, celebrating on Twitter. It's freaking awful. A lot of people have lost their humanity over the past decade.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have my ideas and hypotheses on that, but there's just a lot of nasty people out there. And, a lot of
It's
times in the modern day times, nasty people pretend to be the good guys.
right.
So, but in my personal opinion, if you are celebrating somebody's death because you disagree with their political opinions, you're not the good guy. period. I don't care
Yeah.
what direction that runs in.
It's just
You're not a good guy.
Yeah, it's just bad to be hateful in general.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a bad personal way. If you are
Mhm.
going out there being hateful, you're not gonna have like success principles of just accepting things that happen, and just bad to be hateful. And there's so
Yeah.
much of it. And I think you said that's interesting how you said they play like they're being the good guys.
Oh, geez, yeah. It happens all the time, right? I mean, that's what the definition of virtue signaling is,
Right.
right? So, and then you'll have people who get upset by the term virtue signaling, but it's exactly what
Virtue.
it is, right? It's hypocrisy, right? Virtue is something that you just do, right? You don't have to
Right.
talk about it, right? If someone is constantly making an effort and coming out and beating their chest, talking about how good a person they are and how they're on the right side of history and they're on the right side of everything, then as far as I'm concerned, that's the person you need to look out for. Because when people feel like they are absolutely, unquestionably, morally in the right on everything, then there's no limiting principle to how much evil they can commit,
Yeah.
right? How did
Right.
what happened? If we are going to talk about, we talked about earlier, if you look at the 20th century, whether you look at Nazism or you look at
Hmm.
communism in any of its manifestations, whether that's in the Soviet Union, that's in
Right.
Vietnam, that's in China, etc., the people who led these genocides, who murdered hundreds of millions of people, they thought they're on the right side of history. They
Right.
thought they're doing good, right? They're doing this for the greater good, right? We have to kill all these people for the greater good, right? Because of this particular ideology or to reach this goal or whatever, right? And the reason that can happen and why it was so brutal is because they thought they were doing good, right? Like if you have any semblance of a conscience and you are doing something that is cruel or evil or barbaric, it's very limited how far you can go with it, right? Because
Yeah.
if I do something bad and I'm like, okay, ooh, like I know I'm doing something bad, then I stop, right? Because I have a conscience. But if I'm 100% convinced, it's the same thing with terrorists, right?
Right.
They're so convinced that they are in the right that they will strap a bomb to themselves, they will grab a gun and go shoot people up. They'll do whatever. They'll commit the most horrific act because they're so certain that they have the moral high ground and they've
Right.
convinced themselves that everybody else is evil and must be exterminated essentially. So
Yeah.
it's actually an extremely dangerous, not just is it arrogant and narcissistic, but actually it's a really dangerous form of thinking in the long term, especially when you get like a group, like a large group with that kind of thinking, because then you just get this sort of the ends justifies the means
Right.
situations. And whenever
Yeah.
you have that, then you're not in a good place.
Right. And they convinced themselves, but also Stalin, Hitler, they convinced a lot of other people too. So they
Exactly.
had reinforcing
Hmm.
things that allowed them to continue thinking that. And
Hmm.
yeah, we know how that ended up for them. But
Yeah, but people don't
yeah,
study history. Most people
right,
are pretty ignorant to this stuff and they don't really
right,
look at how it happens. They just assume like, oh, it was just, good guys and bad guys. And it's like, it's not as simple as good guys and bad
right,
guys, man.
right,
It's like, it's not like 80 years ago. I mean, I've been to Germany a lot of times. Like Germany's a great country. I've met so many great German people, right? It's not like 80 years ago, everyone in Germany was like a psycho or something. It's
right,
like,
right,
no, right? They
right.
were ordinary people
And it's
who
easy to
got swept
justify
into this thing.
now for Germany because I mean they did kill 6 million Jewish people. So like if they
Mhm.
didn't, if that was out of the equation, I mean they had some points about like wanting to grow their country, like,
Mhm.
but I mean as far as evil, killing all those people, it's easier to justify now if you just read a headline of history.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well,
but
people always read history and think that they would have been the good guys, but the truth is they wouldn't have been for the most part. Absolutely not. Absolutely
yeah,
not. I mean, if
I
there's one
agree.
thing that's super become clear in the past year is that most people would have supported slavery, most people would have supported the Nazis, most people would have supported communism, et cetera. And I hate to say that, but it's just the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.